So this week I got into a fight with my demons. And no, I don't mean that literally, like I do know people who are like, I'm being attacked by dark psychic entities, wah! No, I mean my inner demons, the ones that we all have. For me, they revolve around shame, not being good enough, wanting to hide, wanting to be invisible, not being worthy. And I'll tell you, this week they almost won. Because, as you're watching this, my new book, I Dreamt a Flight, is now available for purchase on Amazon, but just a couple days ago, I was pretty damn sure that it was never going to see the light of day, and these 5 years of work I've put into it were going to be all for naught. So if we haven't met before, my name is Kay. I'm an ecstatic spiritual life coach where I focus on wholeness, integration, integrity with your inner self, and coming home to being your wild, ecstatic, juicy, beautiful, crazy, sensual you. Just under a year and a half ago, I released my first book, Journey to the Ecstatic Self, a workbook for settling into your skin, cultivating authenticity, and reconnecting with your radiant self, and I got a really tremendous response. Everybody who's engaged with it has been like, this has been life-changing, this has been wonderful, it's really made a difference for my life. In fact, I actually had somebody say to me that my book did more for him and his husband than 2 years of couples therapy. But this actually isn't the first book I've written. The first book is the book that became I Dreamt a Flight, a gay fantasy novel, or at least that's how I bill it, because really it's not so much a novel so much as it is an allegory. It's a taking of the really intense childhood experiences I had of desperately not wanting to be me, wanting to be anybody else, wanting to run and hide, and trying to escape the torment I daily received from my peers about how different and horrible I was. And I turned that into a metaphor about being a part dragon, about being a part mythical creature, and being hated by full humans for being different. That imagery of being part dragon actually was part of my coming out experience because I was so repressed, even to myself, that I didn't even think I might be anything other than straight versus maybe asexual, that when I finally started to accept it, it was like somebody came up to me and said, hey, did anyone ever tell you that you're a dragon? And I was like, no, I'm not. They're like, look behind you. You've got a tail, you've got claws, you've got wings. Have you really never noticed? And I did as they said, turned around and like, oh damn, that's a tail. And oh shit, I am a dragon and I have been deluding myself for quite some time. So that dual experience of both confronting my delusions about myself and finally owning who I am, and then confronting the horrors of my past where quite literally when I was 6th, 7th, 8th grade, there was quite literally not a single class period or passing period where I didn't have at least 2 or 3 insults directed at me, either physically or verbally. My parents actually moved me to a different school district at the end of 5th grade because the bullying was so bad, but little did we know that it was only going to get so much worse. So this was my impetus for this book, and of course using it as I said, an allegory, a parable, to help other people to start to find their own self-worth, to demonstrate kind of the journey I went on to find self-acceptance, to find wholeness, to find joy in being me. Because ultimately that's the only person we can be. We can't be anybody else. And you can try for a certain amount of time, but eventually that burden of pretending is going to become exhausting and will eventually consume you. So with Journey to the Ecstatic Self, I talked about this quite literally. Non-fiction, self-help, part memoir, part activity book, and was very, very upfront about this is what this book's about, here you go. But when I started with this fantasy novel, I really thought that this was going to be the first book I put out, and then I'd put out the self-help book second. But when it came time to seek publishing, I applied to over 300 different publishers and literary agents and got rejected by all of them. And that experience felt really traumatizing for me because the whole story is about somebody who, when he gets seen, he gets bashed. And to be seen is vulnerable, to be seen is dangerous. And that rejection I got re-triggered all these old memories of feeling rejected. There actually was a point when I was receiving all these form letters of rejection that I actually had thoughts of suicide. Like, that's how deep the river of shame runs through me about not being lovable, not being worthy. And, I don't think I ever really considered it, but there was definitely these thoughts of, if I'm really this worthless and nobody wants me, then what is my point of being here? So some really dark and heavy stuff, and clearly there's an element of PTSD. There's an element of being so damaged, being so hurt in the past, and these rejections not just attacking me as I am now, which is pretty healthy and whole and healed, but going back to this 12-year-old, 13-year-old boy who is told by his peer group daily, why don't you just die? It was some pretty heavy shit. Some of the people who had read the book and loved it encouraged me to just go ahead and self-publish it. I didn't feel right about doing it. I wanted to make sure that whatever my first book was, I felt really proud of it and that I had given it time to develop. So I just shelved it. I thought, you know what, I'll move on to other projects. I ended up writing Journey to the Ecstatic Self. But when that was done, this book kept pulling on me. This little character, this part dragon teenager kept poking me in the back saying, hey, what about me? What about me? I need to go out in the world. You need to tell this story because this is part of your healing journey and part of my healing journey to share this story with others. So this past spring, about a year ago, I pulled it off the shelf. I started reworking it, tore it apart, put it back together, aged up the character a little bit so he was able to deal with more adult issues, made him overtly gay rather than just a gay metaphor, and changed it from third person, which is a more traditional style of writing, to first person. And the book is told with him just constantly talking to himself. Because if you watch this channel, you know how much we talk about mindfulness and meditation and how that little voice in our head is always there, and it can be helpful, it cannot be helpful, but for many of us who aren't aware of mindfulness, that voice is ongoing. And so by putting this in the first person, I was able to really try to capture that voice in our head that doesn't shut up, that keeps critiquing us, that keeps telling us we're worthless, and put that on the page. So in one sense, it's really not a traditional novel. It really is more of like a dramatic monologue or a one-man show being told from that voice in our head, talking to ourselves rather than even talking to an audience. It's a little bit untraditional. So anyhow, here I am, rewrote the book, worked with an editor, sent it out to my beta readers, groups of people who I really respect and trust, who I think have good taste, who read fantasy, who read gay literature, and got really, really positive feedback. They said, yes, this is doing what you want it to do. Super proud of you, really loving it. Thank you so much for putting this out in the world. It feels really important. Now here's where the story of last week or the last couple of weeks comes into play, because I've already shared with you the emotional baggage that comes with this book for me, this feeling of tapping into a younger, more vulnerable version of myself who's deeply insecure, deeply afraid of people looking at him and judging him, because that's what happened. I learned to be invisible, I learned to hide, I learned to be quiet and disappear because to be seen was dangerous, to be seen was to be hurt. And it's taken me, my adult life, to get comfortable to be here, to be literally or metaphorically naked before you, which is part of the reason I normally do this without my clothes on. But so I made the decision to post this book on a website called NetGalley, where anyone can download it and leave an advanced review of the book. And I've always envisioned this book for being people like me, particularly gay men who are really struggling with their identity and looking to come into wholeness. And if you're a fan of this YouTube channel, chances are you're probably a gay man. There are some women, there are a couple gender non-conforming people, there are a couple straight people who watch this, but I think YouTube statistics say 98.5% of the people who watch this are men and most likely gay. So I didn't think anything of it when all the people downloading the book were women, and judging by their social media handles, because I went and investigated, gay women. Now, I've never felt like I had any issues with gay women. I've had some friends who were gay women, thought they were part of my people, thought they would be loving and respectful and able to hold this book with an open heart and integrity. But I learned in the last 2 weeks, they're not my people. They do not care for me very much. And they let their ire be known in these reviews they posted. Where on this website, NetGalley or on Goodreads, I got review after review after review after review by these gay women, not only just slaughtering the book, but also being cruel. Like actually cruel, like attacking me, telling me that I am stupid. And why would anyone write a character like this? And I make them so angry that it makes them want to claw their eyes out. Or there's not enough Botox in the world for them to unclench their faces. I actually had somebody say that this book made them want to die, and not in a good way. And how interesting is it that the days leading up to me launching this book, every review that comes in from this demographic is negative and attacking. That every one of these women, who I would have thought of as being part of my LGBTQ family, loathed me. And not just me, but this character who is me. This character who is my younger self, the one struggling with this abuse, and tearing him to shreds. And I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. It fucking hurt. I think it's part of the reason I ended up getting COVID last week, was I was dealing with this shit. Like, I was raging and crying and screaming at these gay women, being like, how fucking dare you? How do you treat anybody like this? Like, you know me, you've watched my channel. Words of kindness. If you don't have something nice to say, don't even bother saying it. There's always something nice to talk about, but for these people to just literally try to inflict pain it took me back to that space of being that vulnerable young boy who people were lashing out and trying to hurt. Now, I also want to throw out there, I am a self-aware enough person to genuinely consider the possibility, is this genuinely a bad book? Like, should I have no business putting it out there in the world? I sent it to a few other people, even asked their opinions and said, hey, this is the experience I'm having, this is the response I'm getting. Is it me? Is it them? Am I just triggering the shit out of this population? Are apparently me and lesbians not on the same wavelength? Because as my husband says, you know, Kaylin, I think if lesbians actually watched your YouTube video, or certainly if they saw you wagging your willy about on Twitter, they would hate you as well. That this would be triggering the shit out of them as well. And I'm like, yeah, it's entirely possible that me and that demographic apparently just do not match, which mazel tov to them. You know, it can't be everything to all people, and that's okay. I'm happy to support the people who love and respect this work that I'm doing and realize that I'm coming at this from an open heart. But I legitimately considered, should I take these 5 years of work and just throw them away? Should I say, all right, I'm not going to put the book out there because I can't handle being attacked in this way. My 12-year-old self, who this book is written for, can't handle these attacks. And so I sat with it. I went through several really dark days where I couldn't do much more than the bare minimum because I was feeling so entirely worthless and shamed. And I'll be honest, even the fact that now we're officially launching I Dreamt a Flight, there's a part of me that is petrified. I am so scared that it's going to go out there and everybody's just going to lambaste it. And I don't think they will. I think people who have been on journeys like mine will see it for the story that it is, will see that it's a story of transformation and growth, and that this isn't just a fantasy novel, it is a memoir, it is an allegory, it is my story told through a very specific lens. Because of this experience, I ended up adding a preface to the book, an author's note saying, hey, before you read this, just realize this isn't really a work of fiction. This is much more of a true story than you would suppose, so please go into this with an open heart and curiosity and respect for the situations, because many of these conversations, many of these situations really did happen. And before you want to kill this character, think that this actually is a real young boy who's suffering these atrocities. So I'm doing it. I'm doing what I encourage you all to do, which is being brave, to listen to your instincts, to focus on what you do rather than the results, to focus on your efforts, to say, this feels right to me. This story feels like it needs to be heard. And even if nobody likes it, I need to do what feels right for me. And that's a really deep spiritual truth when you do things because you find value, because you enjoy it, because it's meaningful in here, and fuck what everybody else thinks. That's a really powerful place to be, but it's also hard ground to hold. Like, you have to have a tremendous amount of self-resilience, a tremendous amount of belief in your inner worth, your heart, what you put out there. It's not an easy path to walk. So here I am. I'm sharing my heart, my soul, my very young, injured self with you all. And I would humbly like to ask a request. I'd be very grateful if you go on Amazon, download the book so it shows as a verified purchase, leave a review. And even if you haven't gotten a chance to read the book yet, you know what the themes are. Write something positive so other people will give it a chance, and hopefully it will find its audience of other young, queer, gay men who need it, and it will help them. And then once you read the book, you can come back and add more details, change it as you'd like, but help support this work we're doing. Help to build up this idea that queer male voices looking for love, looking for self-acceptance, looking for joy, have a space, that we aren't being shamed for who we are by these lesbians, that we have a voice and we deserve to exist, that we can't be shut down in this way. Go on Goodreads, post a review there to counter that toxic shit that they've been pouring out. I don't know why I'm so triggering to that demographic, but I would never wish onto any of them what they've done to me. And some of them themselves, based on their social media profiles, are authors. I'm like, how dare you do this? How do you not just lift each other up? And if you didn't like it, great, then it wasn't for you. It doesn't mean it's necessarily bad, it just means you weren't its audience. But like, part of me wants to just like go and post the mean, cruel reviews they wrote about my book and just post it on their own and be like, how do you like this? How do you like the experience of somebody saying this? Why would you put that out there? I mean, because here's the karmic truth, an energetic truth. Everything you do affects you. Every word you choose, every thought you have enters your energetic sphere. It affects your karma. It affects your experience of life. So if you put positive energy out there, if you use words of kindness and words of upliftment, then it's going to come back and bolster your experience of life. If you go out there and be mean and cruel and closed-hearted, all of that is just entering into your energetic body. And what you do to another person, as I say in many of my videos, is really what you do to yourself, because I am not separate from you. You are not separate from me. We are all one. on. So let's just be kind to one another. Like, is that really so hard to just be fucking kind? To treat somebody else how you want to be treated. To be loving, to be thoughtful, to be mindful with your words and actions. And unless somebody really needs to be shifted and they've asked for help, you don't need to go and like tell them how they ought to be. Let them go on their journey. Respect them enough to say you'll figure it out. And if you need help, I'm happy to assist, but I don't need to offer my unsolicited advice because we're all struggling to find self-worth. We're all struggling to find belonging. We're all struggling to be the men that we're meant to be. So let's build each other up. Let's lift one another up. Let's help each other connect with their angels rather than their demons. Because I don't wish on anybody what I've gone through these 2 weeks. So please check out my book. I hope you love it. Put some good juju out there, leave a positive review, and I will be sincerely grateful. And just one thing to entice you, if it helps, if you send me a screen grab of your review and your purchase on Amazon, I will send you a custom video saying thank you to you specifically, as just my deep appreciation for you helping me to do this work and support this work and share it with the world. So thank you for all that you are. Thank you for all that you do. I hope your own journey of coming into being is going well, and I sincerely hope you enjoy I Dreamt a Flight. It has been 5 years of loving and sharing and soul digging, and I hope it's meaningful to you. Thank you so much for your time, your ears, and your heart. Be well.